Hi, Louise.
Hi, Nicole. Thanks very much for introducing me and for welcoming everybody to today's event. As Nicole said, my name is Louise. I've been running these energy clinics for the past 3 weeks. This is the final one. We've had one on heating and we've had one last week on appliances and electricity costs as well. So this one is all about transport. Did you know that private transport accounts for 20% of all energy use in Ireland? So it's a big one and maybe something that we don't think about enough maybe. We're joined today by Shane Prendergast, who's Program Manager in our EV Grants Department. Shane is an expert in all things sustainable transport, so he's here today to answer all your questions, big or small, about transport. Welcome, Shane.
Hey Louise, thanks for having me. Looking forward to
Super,
it.
thanks a million. I'll just do a little bit of housekeeping, and then myself and Shane are just going to go through some of the kind of commonly asked questions that we're asked a lot in SEAI, and then we'll be straight over to answer your questions. The purpose of today is to answer your questions, not for us to give a presentation on transport or anything like that. So we really want to answer any questions that you might have, any burning questions you might have about transport. So this event is being recorded. So for anyone who is unable to stay for the full event, I will be emailing it out tomorrow with the list of frequently asked questions as well. All your cameras are off. You're muted as well. So the questions, any questions you have can be submitted by clicking the Q&A bubble. It's just down in the right-hand corner. And if you click that and just type in your question and send it to all panelists, myself and Shane will both be able to see them and we'll read them out then as they come in. Anything that we can't get to for any reason, if you have too many questions for us in our allotted time of a half an hour, what we'll do is we'll get Shane to answer them and we'll send them out in that FAQ sheet tomorrow. But hopefully we'll get through them all. Um, yes, I think that's all the question. I think that's all the housekeeping. So do keep popping your questions in there. We're going to be answering them in the next 5 minutes or so. So Shane, I thought to start with, you mentioned this mantra, the avoid, shift, improve mantra. Can you just go through what that is a little bit just to help people understand it?
Yeah, no problem, Louise. As you said, transport is probably a very high contributor to the emissions in Ireland at the minute. So there is this mantra we would tend to push out there a small bit called, as you said, the avoid, shift, improve. So it's three prongs to it really. So the avoid is trying to understand what journeys you make, and more importantly, do you need to make that journey? Like if you're popping down to the shop, you need to make that journey. Can you tie it in with another journey you're making? Are you going to the gym later? Are you going picking up the kids from school? Can you go to the shop and combine them? So you're not doing two trips, you're doing one trip. So you're actually trying to reduce the number of trips you're actually making. And if, say, you own a business that does deliveries, do you actually need to do as many deliveries you're doing? Are your vans, are your vehicles, are they all full while they're going out? Is there any empty running when they're on the way back? Is there other tasks that they could run on the way back, like picking up materials you might need to make your products or whatever it may be? So avoid is essentially, do you need to make the journey? Can you avoid the journey?
Yeah.
Then you kind of move to the shift approach. So that is, right, you've decided you have to make the journey, but is there another medium of transport you can use? Like, do you need to use your single occupancy car or vehicle? Can you use public transport instead? Can you walk? Can you use some of the segregated cycling infrastructure that is out there at the moment as well? So you're kind of shifting away from using a fossil fuel vehicle into a more multimodal transport, more sustainable transport. That said, like, can you get in a bus? Can you use the rail, cycle, walk, and all the good kind of sustainable transport options that are there at the minute? And then that leads to the final prong, which is your improve. So a lot of people will look at improve and say, well, how do I improve my transport? One method is to improve the technology used, which is where the electric vehicles comes in, as they're more efficient, they're a lot cleaner as well for when you're actually taking your travel decisions. So you can hop in your EV, there's no tailpipe in a fully electric vehicle, so there's no tailpipe emissions attributed to that. Now, there is the other hand where the electricity used to power those vehicles does have a CO2 intensity factor associated with it. But for the most part, when you're looking at air quality and things like that, the emissions, there is none because there's no tailpipe. Another part to improve is a lot of people say, well, I can't afford EVs. I can't afford to be buying these new vehicles, this
Mm.
new technology, which is a fair enough point because they are more expensive than your traditional ICE vehicles, your petrol or diesel vehicles. So another way you can improve is actually looking at your driving behavior in the first place, which is where the whole kind of concept of eco driving comes in. So at the end, you're really looking, do I need to make the journey? Is there another medium I can make it? And if I still have to make the journey, can I use improved technology or can I improve my driving technique?
Okay, so avoid, shift, improve. Okay, really simple. Can you tell us a little bit more about eco driving as well? Because I think we've all started to hear a little bit about it. I've even gotten questions, does it really make a difference if you drive slower, for instance? Um, what can people do, first of all, and does it make a difference?
Yeah, 100% it makes a
Okay,
difference. And contrary to people saying it doesn't, it actually does. And what essentially it is changing your driving behavior, your driving style to essentially get the most economic, the most efficient results out of how you drive. So there's really, you can look at, there's 5 golden rules to eco driving. The first one is anticipate. So that's where you're trying to anticipate the traffic flow ahead of you. Is the vehicles ahead of you, are they slowing down? So you're avoiding that harsh braking or the harsh accelerating. If you can do gentle accelerating, gentle braking, it will actually make what fuel's in your tank stretch further as well. So it's anticipating what's ahead of you and adjusting your driving accordingly. Second golden rule then is essentially slow down, which is a big
yeah,
one and which does make sense. So if you look, if you're driving on a motorway and you're doing your 120 kilometers per hour, if you actually reduce your speed to 100 kilometers per hour, you're actually saving 25% on your fuel use, which is
25%.
25
Okay,
a whole quarter. So it's actually very good that you're actually saving 25%. Now people will argue, well, it's going to take you longer to get there, but and it will, because
yeah,
that's just the science of it as well. But how much longer is it you going to save that 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes? Can you afford to do it? Most people can, to be fair. And you can
yeah,
actually, you're saving in your pocket, but you're also saving emissions. The faster you go, the more emissions come out of your vehicle as well. So you're not just saving yourself the money, you're actually saving a bit on the planet and the climate side of things as well. So there is that. But when you do go above in your vehicle, go above 60 kilometers per hour, the biggest drain on fuel, which will surprise a lot of people, is actually wind resistance.
okay,
So, which is interesting. So, if you're slowing down your vehicle to say 100 kilometers per hour on the motorway, you're actually reducing the amount of wind resistance your vehicle is facing, which is where the savings in the fuel comes from. So then, if we move on to the third golden rule, it's probably an unusual one that people mightn't have thought of before, and that's to change up a gear early. So
okay,
what that actually means is when you're changing gear, it it deals with the kind of RPM, the revs that you have in your vehicle, and every vehicle will have a rev counter on the dashboard, so you can track it as well. And the most appropriate and efficient economic way to change up your gear is between 1,000 and 2,000 RPM or 1,000 and 2,000 revs, and do your best to avoid over revving. That is a massive loss of fuel. It takes a lot of fuel when you over rev your vehicle.
okay,
So to get a little more specific, if you have a diesel vehicle, if you're between 1,200 and 1,800 revs is the right time to change up a gear. And for petrol, it's a little bit higher again. It's between 1,500 and 2,000 revs. So then we get to the fourth golden rule, which everyone will have heard people going on about before, which is your tire pressure. And
yes, yeah, and
yeah,
it's something
yeah,
I think people don't think about at all unless you've got a flat tire or a
yeah,
bald tire.
100%. No one pays much attention to it unless there's that little warning coming up on your dashboard as well for
Yeah.
some of the newer vehicles that are out there. But if you've tires that are underinflated, so that there's not enough air in them, it actually costs more fuel for your vehicle to rotate those tires as well. So we would always say keep a check on your tire pressure. You can buy handy little monitors that you can check if you don't have the functionality within the dashboard and your infotainment systems to check the tire pressure. And if you are buying new tires, I would definitely recommend looking at the tire labeling and looking for A-rated tires for fuel efficiency. So if
Okay.
you, yeah, which it makes sense. They're the most
Yeah.
fuel efficient tires you can get. So if you combine A-rated fuel efficient tires with keeping your tires properly inflated, it can actually save you up to 5% on your fuel. So if
Okay.
you're
Yeah.
slowing down your vehicle on the motorway, you're looking at your tires are already up to 30% saving just from those two on their own. But a kind of secondary benefit for your tires is keeping them inflated will actually extend the lifespan of your tires. And we all hate that bringing into the garage and being told, yep, you need a tire in the back, tire in the
Yeah.
front, and it adds up fairly quick. So if you can push that out by just keeping them inflated. It's a very simple job you can do to help it. And that kind
Are
of,
those handy, those little monitors you're talking about, are they easy enough to use?
yeah, they would
Yeah.
be. Now there's a
Okay.
few different
Okay.
ones out there. If you go into a local Halfords or whatever kind
Yeah.
of hardware shop, you'll be pick one up handy. They'll all come with instructions as well. You can
Okay,
keep them in the
brilliant.
car if you need to as well. So then the kind of fifth and final golden rule is to actually try and consider any extra energy you're using with your vehicle.
Mm,
So there's a few different facets to this one as well, like idling. A lot of people think that's not costing me fuel. It most certainly is costing me
okay.
fuel. And no matter how long or what way you do it, idling is going to cost you fuel regardless of what way you think you're doing it. But a lot of the newer vehicles are actually fitted with what's called a stop start system.
Yeah.
It's where if you're stopped at the traffic lights, your engine kind of cuts out. I would always recommend to save fuel, to save and make you more economic in your transport. Don't override that stop start. Use it
Okay.
and you will actually save fuel. Then you get to
It's even older cars, Shane, that does it just if you're stuck in traffic or something and you know you're going to be there for a while, is it worth switching off the engine?
you could argue that as well, and
Yeah.
it probably is depending on how long you're going to be there as well.
Yeah.
Like, so you have to make your own kind of, it would be a subjective judgment call.
Yeah.
Like if you're
Yeah.
coming up and it's been red for a while, you're not really going to switch it off because it's going to
Yeah.
turn in the next couple of
It's a bit of a
seconds. But
pain.
if it's just going amber and you're slowing down, it could be worth turning it off
Okay.
potentially. So you also have the ancillaries you use. So the aircon, the heat, the heated seats, the heated steering wheel, everything seems to be heated these days as well in the cars.
Yeah.
So they do cost fuel when you use them. It does use additional fuel. So do you need to use them? Can you precondition your vehicle? Like some of the new cars will have apps where you can precondition it and things like that. But also you need to think if you are trying to avoid your aircon or your heat, whatever it might be, and you open your window, say in a motorway, that's going to use a lot of fuel for you as well because you're breaking the airflow over the vehicle itself. So I would definitely say if you're traveling at a higher speeds, close your windows, use your aircon. That'd be the most efficient way you could use that.
Okay.
Then,
Because
and
I think we've all been told to open a window. You know, growing up, I would have thought
yeah,
it was the other way around. Okay.
yeah, it's nearly kind of counterintuitive a small bit like that. All right. So when we're talking kind of about that air resistance, then you just try and minimize that as best you can. So that comes in when if you have, say, your bike carrier on your vehicle, or if you have a roof rack or a roof box, if you're not using them, don't have them on the car. They're adding weight to the car. They're disrupting the airflow of the car, and it's going to cost you again. You're going to use more fuel to actually move the vehicle than if they weren't on it. So it's about just minimizing that kind of air resistance over the car as well, if you can. And then kind of the last facet, which seems fairly obvious to me anyway, is don't have any equipment or any tools or whatever in your car that you don't need. You're carrying
Yeah.
around an extra weight. It's taking more fuel to actually power the car because of the extra weight. So just empty your boot, only carry what you actually need or what you're actually going to use, really. And that's kind of the five golden rules of eco driving.
Okay, there's actually loads of stuff there that I hadn't even thought about. That's really helpful. Yeah, if anyone else has any other tips or any questions about eco driving, pop them into the Q&A. Just before we start getting into the questions, then I just want to ask you a little bit about anyone who's on the call who might be thinking about maybe buying a new car, who maybe has the budget to buy an electric vehicle. What kind of savings are we talking about by switching to an electric vehicle in terms of fuel costs? And I
Yeah.
know obviously the emissions benefits as well.
Yeah, like you have the environmental benefits, but we're
Yeah.
kind of nearly talking more about the financial side here. And
Yeah.
like when we all look at EVs, we do notice that it's a higher price than a petrol or diesel car. It is going to cost you more, but it's the offset of that price is where the savings really come in with your fuel savings. Particularly if you can charge at home on, say, a night rate, you're actually going to charge a vehicle for quite a lot lower than going to the pumps and putting in your petrol, diesel. Well, they nearly €2 a litre at the moment and whatnot. So you can save probably, you'd say up to 70% on your annual fuel bill,
Okay.
which is a massive
It's,
saving when you do
it's
think
a
about it.
lot, yeah.
Yeah.
And what would you say if you wanted to charge? Now, I'm sure they're all different, but just say you're charging your EV overnight at home. Roughly at the moment, what would it cost for a full charge?
Yeah, it It's difficult to say a rough
Yeah,
one
okay.
because
Yeah.
they're all different. They've different battery size and things like that. But I would probably estimate you could be somewhere between 8 and 12 euro.
Okay. And
And
that's like that
that's
could be up to 400 kilometers.
yeah,
Okay. Well,
and
that's
that's
a lot.
that's going
Okay.
from zero to essentially full as well. So it's very rare you're going to charge zero to full. You're going to be more kind of in the middle range of 20, 30 up to 80, 90 or whatever it might be. So it's actually going to come down a bit. And like you do have 350, 400, 450 range cars out there. So you're not going to be charging every night either. So you need to
Yeah,
take that
of
into
course.
account. That
Yeah,
might be once, twice, 3 times a week, depending on what your driving habits are each day as well. But
brilliant.
there's also savings with the EVs then as well in the maintenance because there's an awful lot less moving parts. So the standard maintenance is actually reduced on that as well. And then you can talk about all the generous suite of incentives that are out there, like the purchase grants to contribute to the purchase price for new EV of up to €5,000. You have your home charger grant of up to €6,000 towards the purchase and install of a home charging unit. You've the toll incentives that are there, the the VRT relief that's there as well. Like there's significant incentives out there to help you make your decision as well.
Yeah, I when in the email tomorrow, I'll pop a list of all the grant incentives, and even I think the one for the toll is because we all hate paying for the toll.
Definitely,
Like
definitely.
all the different incentives. Yeah, there's great incentives out there, and just a little bit. I can see loads of questions coming in.
Lovely.
Just about secondhand EVs. Is there? I know the secondhand market is tough at the minute, but can you get an EV at the moment secondhand, and will it work away for you and everything?
Yeah, there is second-hand EVs out there, but they are limited enough at the
Yeah.
moment. But it's not just second-hand cars or used cars that are limited at the moment, or used EVs that are limited. It's across the whole motor industry. I think it's been well publicized the supply chain issues with the vehicles and semiconductors that are out there, and that has fed down into the second-hand market. But if you do a search on any of the motor selling sites, you will find it probably 400 or 500 EVs, maybe more at this stage. I wouldn't know the exact figure at any
Okay.
time that you can buy now. It's not
Yeah.
huge, but they are there.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, there is options out there for people who mightn't be able to afford the brand new EV.
Yeah, 100%. So you just have to understand what your driving habits are and what spec of a second-hand or used vehicle that you might need to cover that as well.
Okay. Well, let's go to the questions.
Perfect.
So I'm not sure if I fully understand this one, but maybe you will. And if not, I might just ask the person to resubmit. What is the break even for electric cars for CO2 emissions for Ireland?
Yeah, I wouldn't have
Okay.
that off the top of my head, to be honest with
Okay.
you, because
Yeah.
I think that's referring back to when I mentioned the carbon intensity factor with the electricity generation in Ireland. But we do have a target, I think it's 70% renewables to be on the grid by 2030. So the more renewables we put on the grid, the closer that break even point from CO2 emissions becomes as well. And I would estimate that probably over its lifespan, an EV could have 50% lower CO2 when you're talking well to wheel
Okay.
compared to a petrol or diesel vehicle, because you'd think that petrol diesel you get at the fuel station, that has to come from somewhere, that has to be shipped, that's from somewhere, that has to go into the tanker trailers and has to be brought there as well. So there is embedded CO2 from that as well that people tend to not incorporate when they talk about CO2, because if you're going to talk about the kind of
Hmm.
CO2 from the electricity generation, you have to kind of cover that with an apples by apples comparison, and you need to talk about the CO2 from the generation of the fuel and the transport of the fuel to power your petrol or diesel vehicle as well.
Okay. Perfect. What do you think, Shane, on the recent announcements from ESB on the public charger rate increases? Um, this is raising electric vehicle usage to similar levels to diesel rates.
Yeah, I saw that come out
Yeah, a
there
lot in the
recently,
paper, I think, and yeah, the
and
last few days.
yeah, I think it's from the 20th of December that's going to come into play as well. And what I would say is it's getting a little bit skewed a small bit in that it
Okay.
is the very fast and rapid public charging that will be on the same, or what we'll say close to the diesel rates to fuel your vehicle then. But if you look at the actual facts, 80 to 90% of charging is done at home, which is still significantly cheaper than fueling a petrol or diesel vehicle. And it could be for that couple of trips you might take a year, heading up to Dublin for your
Yeah.
Christmas shopping or going to a gig or whatever, a concert, whatever it might be. And yeah, it is going to probably cost you the same as driving a diesel or a petrol vehicle because the increase in prices. So that is something you'll have to build in as well. But then the other side is, let's go back to that mantra, that avoid, shift, improve.
Yeah.
You're going to need to make the journey, but how about you shift it into public transport? Is there a train? Is there a bus you could take?
Yeah.
And then you're
Yeah.
not actually paying that higher rate for the fast public charging infrastructure.
So that is really only going to affect people on those longer journeys where they're not charging at home.
Yes,
Okay.
or people who
Yeah.
don't have access to, say, a home or a local charger.
Yeah. And there is new information now as well for apartment chargers. There's grants as well for people living in
Yeah,
apartments, which is great news as well.
there is indeed. On
Mm.
the SCI website, you'll find all you need to know, and you can talk to your
Yeah.
owner management company and see if we can help you out, get some chargers involved into your.
Yeah. So there's a lot of really positive things happening. And I think, yeah, so our focus really is to tell people to charge at home where possible or avoid the journey.
Yeah.
um, Would there be help in setting up a shared electric vehicle scheme for a large suburban housing estate? For example, a charging point and reserve parking space for community shareholders. Really interesting idea.
Yeah, no, fantastic idea, I must say. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there's something similar being trialed in Fingal County Council.
Oh, okay.
I think they actually have a community car scheme where they have two electric vehicles that they're trialing at the moment. I don't have the exact details of it,
Oh,
but
okay. Well, we'll see if we can take that up for you, and I'll pop it into the FAQs tomorrow, if there is a trial at the moment. So, like, I mean, that would be going to your county council, though, wouldn't it? And kind of spurring them on to do something.
yeah, at the
Yeah.
moment it would
Yeah.
be going through your kind of county council because there isn't a
Yeah.
government project or scheme that kind of covers that side of things at the moment.
Just yet, anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, but we also
Yeah.
have our public charging infrastructure grants as well that we do run out through the local authorities where if say you don't have access to off-street parking, you can contact your local authorities and talk about getting some charge points in the locality, some shared charge points as well.
Brilliant. Main concern in relation to buying an EV is a battery failure in 5 or 6 years. The uncertainty of the battery life. What about the current going into the charging battery? So I think I do hear that a lot as well. Is that a real
Like
risk?
I don't see that as a real concern or risk whatsoever, to be honest. If you
Okay.
look at the warranties that are provided when you buy an electric vehicle, they're 6, 7, 8 years, 100, 150,000 kilometers, that style. So to be honest, vehicle manufacturers aren't going to get caught out in the warranty to have to replace batteries and things like that. So, and I must emphasize this, at an absolute minimum, you're looking at 7, 8 years. And I would actually even disagree with that as well, because all the data that is being released at the moment is showing it's more 12, 15, 18, 20 years that the EV batteries can last within the vehicles themselves. But I would also counter that and say people always talk about EVs. When are you going to have to replace a battery? When are you going to have to replace the motor? When they're trying to buy the EV, but I never hear people when they're looking to buy a petrol or diesel thinking, oh, when am I going to have to replace the head gasket? When are the ball bearings in the engine going to go? When's the engine going to clap out on me? It's not a concern, and it's just because EVs are still that emerging technology. People haven't got that. What's the word I'm looking for? That kind of
I suppose
security
confidence,
or
maybe. Yeah.
confidence in it just
Yeah.
yet. And I would just say get into an EV and drive it, and you'll start to get that confidence then once you're actually in one.
Yeah, and talk to other EV owners. I think that's the
Yeah.
best thing because you'll hear them and it's overwhelmingly positive, I think. Um, I have heard that electric vehicles can give trouble and can be expensive to repair. I suppose a similar concern there, Shane.
Yeah, no, actually, EVs are extremely reliable. It's from what I've heard from
Mm.
everyone from the Irish EV Owners Association. Like it's like every car that's out there. You will have your certain cases, and it seems that for the EVs, particularly again because they're new, it's those cases that get the most publicity. But like if you look at say Tesla, they have a vehicle that they drove for over 1 million kilometers. Like
Mm.
that's 1 million kilometers, and there was no issues with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, you mentioned there the EV associations. If anyone's thinking about buying an EV, I'd definitely join that group on Facebook. It's so helpful,
Yeah.
and it really you can ask them any questions as well. They're like so
Yeah.
passionate about EVs. It's really good.
Yeah,
Um,
they're very
yeah,
engaging, and
yeah, really good. Yeah, we often
And
talk to them.
if
Really
you
good.
look at the EVs as well, as I said, there's a lot less parts moving parts
Yeah,
in an EV, so there's a lot less that can go wrong as well.
Yeah, definitely. Just a couple more questions. I know you're stuck for time, Shane. With an average home solar system battery, how long does it take to fully charge a normal size EV? For example, a 5 kilowatt battery is in the house.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. It's essentially down to doing the maths and understanding what size of a battery's in your EV. So if you've a 5 kilowatt hour that's system in your house, solar system that's pushing that out 5 kilowatts an hour, and you have a 50 kilowatt hour battery that's essentially empty. So 50, you're filling at 5 kilowatts an hour, that's 10 hours.
10 hours. Okay, oh, brilliant. And then there's no cost.
But you could also get a battery there in case you're not at home, which
Yeah,
is where when the sun is shining, and you can
yeah.
store up that good energy and feed that back into it as well.
Okay, brilliant. Um, Someone is just asking, and I think this is something we hear a lot about as well, just about the kind of the working conditions where batteries are mined. Is there, to your knowledge, is there any plans to kind of make the more eco-friendly or human-friendly batteries down the line?
Yeah, I don't have much information on that, but I know
Yeah.
it is something that is being looked into at the moment to try and improve the conditions and
Mm,
improve the mining conditions for the materials as well. So
yeah.
hopefully that will improve and go to more human-friendly methods
Yeah.
of it as well. So I
Because
don't have
it's the same
much more
for
info on it.
phones and
Yeah,
laptops. I mean,
like
it's
all
obviously something
those,
that everyone is using now.
yeah, like all those materials in EV
Mm,
battery, they're actually the same as the ones in your smartphone that you carry
yeah.
around, your laptops, your
Yeah.
TVs, all this kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so something obviously I think I have seen articles where there is improvements being made. I can see if I can find a link to any articles on it for you and pop it into the FAQs tomorrow. Um, can I get an EV that I can use to power my home? Solar store, lots of batteries sitting there doing nothing most of the time. This is probably
It's a good question, very forward thinking question, and
yeah.
I like it. I must say, kind of trying to make your house that microgrid. Yes, you can. There are EVs out there that are capable of it. It's what is called bidirectional charging, or V2G, vehicle to grid. So it has to be a V2G capable vehicle, but you also need a charger that can switch the flow on the charge, so it can be bidirectional. And you'll need some inverters and things like that in your system as well. And you can have your solar feeding in, you could have a battery there, and you could actually power your house. There's always something I quote on this, and it's a couple of years ago. Nissan actually done a very nice PR stunt where on the Ajax in Amsterdam, the Ajax Amsterdam Soccer Arena, they actually hooked up a load of different Nissan Leafs, and they actually powered the stadium fully from
Oh,
the
cool.
electric vehicles for a Champions League match.
Deadly. Okay. So possible.
Very
That's really
possible.
good to know. Brilliant. Is it true, just maybe one or two last questions, is it true that the resale value of an EV is a lot less because of the life of the battery cost? I think that's probably something we've kind of addressed. Is the resale value less
No,
in a normal?
not
No.
at all.
Okay.
In fact, the second-hand market and the used market is actually, their prices are very, very high for EVs at the moment because they're, as I said, the supply issues. So that has them high
Yeah.
at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think anyone trying to buy any second-hand car at the moment, they'll be surprised
Yeah. It's the
how
whole
expensive
industry
they are.
wide at the
Yeah.
minute. Yeah.
Issues with recycling EV batteries. Is there an issue, Shane, that you're aware of? Or
Yeah, it's an emerging
yeah.
technology is EVs, so
Mm.
they're now starting to try and look towards getting this circular economy around the batteries of EVs and being able to extract the rare earth elements and the different elements of a battery, so it can be then fed back into the production cycle. If you look at Tesla in the USA, they have a couple of plants that are actually operational, where they're actually extracting that material and sending it back to the production line. So starting to close that. Like, if a good example is, if you look at the 12-volt lead acid battery in all vehicles out there, when that began, that was not nowhere near a circular economy. But as it got more plentiful, the
Yeah.
technology in the sector kind of caught up with it, and now it's 99% of a circular economy with those lead acid batteries. And every dealership in Ireland, every manufacturer in Ireland who sells an EV has to sign up to the WE register, which deals with end of life batteries and recycling batteries as well.
Okay, that's really interesting. I hope that answered that person's question. I think it did very well. I think we might leave it there, Shane, because I know you're very busy man today. Um, Yeah, so I just want to kind of reiterate what you said there at the start, that avoid, shift, improve mantra. We can all start repeating it to ourselves, trying to cut down on journeys that maybe we don't need to make by either electric or diesel or petrol cars, using public transport. I know difficult out the countryside, but where possible, to maybe share a car journey, to do 2 in 1 if you can, do the groceries and pick up the kids. All really kind of useful, kind of simple ideas as well. This, as I said, this is recorded. We're going to be putting them, all 3 of the webinars, on our YouTube channel. They'll also be on our website as well, and I'll provide the link to everyone tomorrow, along with the FAQ sheet and the recording for this one as well. So I just want to thank everyone very much for joining us over the past 3 weeks. We'll definitely run these sessions again. I hope everyone found them useful. And thanks to Shane for joining us and being so helpful with answering all the questions.
Thanks, Louise.
All right, thanks everyone. Hope you all have a lovely day.